Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast. In this week's podcast, we chat with Sarah Brady from Etihad Stadium about their new tech rollout, and I catch up with North Melbourne Football Club captain Andrew Swallow on how do you deal with all of those fans.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who looks up to Shaquille O'Neal because he's so damn tall, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. That's right. My name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and you're listening to the Sports Geek podcast. This is episode 86. On this week's episode, I'm going to bring back a little bit of audio from our very successful SB Week event with the Sports Biz Melbourne crew. Go to Sports Business Melbourne on meetup.com and join us. Congratulations to Russell Scabetti for running SB Week. He put out the final numbers. Over $8,000 was raised for the V Foundation with over 40 events run around the world. We ran one at Etihad Stadium with the invitation of Sarah Brady, who's the marketing manager there at Etihad Stadium, to talk about their new tech rollout that they're doing with Wi-Fi and IPTV under the using the solution from the guys at Sporting Innovations. So we'll have a little bit of that chat from that, and then later on in the episode, real hot topic here in Australia has been fans clashing with players and coaches. I'll put a link in the show notes. Alistair Clarkson, former North Melbourne player, but now Premiership Hawthorn coach, was bothered by a few drunk Port Adelaide fans as he walked back to the hotel, and Clarko, known for a little bit of a short fuse, decided to push the fan in the face or the throat area for his own safety, to sort of get out of the way and get into the hotel. And it's caused a bit of a storm here in Melbourne and pretty much in Australia in talking about the interactions with fans and coaches. And then following up that, Chris Judd, Carlton player, was again bothered by a fan while simply just having some fish and chips at a local shop. And another fan decided to take the footage of it. Nothing happened of it, and as Andrew talks about, Juddy was able to disarm it. But I wanted to talk to Andrew, being a captain and being in the public eye, how he goes about handling those kind of issues, and a few other things around leadership and what he's learnt so far at the footy club. So a little bit different here for this week's Sports Geek podcast. But first up, a snippet from our SB Week event at Etihad Stadium. I open up by asking Sarah Brady, the marketing manager from Etihad Stadium, a little bit about her role. And also a little bit about the rollout that they've just done in the last couple of weeks at Etihad Stadium.
Sure. So I'm relatively new role at Etihad Stadium as marketing manager. I've been here since January, but this all started start of last year. We've rolled out about a $10 million connected stadium solution, which covers IPTV, which you can see around you. There's 1,500 screens around the stadium. There's free Wi-Fi, which my brother tells me is faster than his NBN at home. Not joking. And there's a stadium app, which only just got launched in round one of this year. But that all basically is integrated into not only a connected solution for the fan, but a new brand for the stadium in a young, dynamic, innovative brand.
So just quick show of hands, who's been to Etihad Stadium so far this year and tried the Wi-Fi, downloaded the app, those kind of things? Don't be shy, put your hands up.
Can do it now.
You can do it now. You can download it. I've got free T-shirts for people who want to participate in tonight's stuff. I want a question for Josh. This project. 12 months in the making. Easy on the sign. So what's PMY's involvement been in the project?
I suppose since day one, a lot of it is planning and understanding first and foremost what you can be doing with this solution. There's obviously been, I suppose, a global movement, certainly out of the US with the connector solution and what that looks like. Very, very different mark into Australia, and certainly Etihad Stadium's a good example of it. Most of the stadiums in the US are one sport, one owner, one team, one town. Very few of that obviously comes into the Australian market. So there's a lot to contemplate and a lot to understand when you start going, well, we want to do this. The next question is, one, how are we going to do it? And then another important question is, how the hell are we going to pay for it? So exactly as Sarah said, $10 million has gone into this. And there's also the understanding of what each of the stadiums look like, whether, for instance, this one, it's owned by people, so it's a commercial entity in itself, so there's got to be a return on investment. Some of the other stadiums around the country are obviously owned by governments or different sort of setup, so there needs to be an understanding of what the rights holders is, what the actual ownership structure of each and every stadium is, but then there needs to be an understanding of what the stadium wants to get out of it and how that's going to engage with all the fans. So the process was very much for about 3 or 4 months of engagement and trying to understand what the stadium wanted to get out of it. Then from that time, we basically came up with, or helped consult and worked with the stadium to find out and basically put that list on. If you want to achieve X, what do you need to do technically? And then work out how much that's going to cost. So that caused, I suppose, a lot of the discussions and tender processes with some of the big tech companies around. And as probably most of you know, Telstra and Cisco were the partners that were chosen to bring this solution to life. So our role, once the business case was done and the board signed it off, our role turned to the other side to actually project manage that across. So there's a fair bit of intricacies to bring it to life. First and foremost, obviously the tech side. So where Telstra and Cisco fit into that technical bucket. The commercial stream, how it's going to be paid for, and working with the stadium to, I suppose, to bring it to life. One, from an education point of view within the stadium, but then some of the key partnerships and out and about media, OAMM have come in as a sales partner to partner with the stadium to bring it to life. Then there's the digital app, the digital stream that Sarah mentioned as well. So Sporting Innovations, a company out of Kansas City in the US, won actually the right to build the digital application for this stadium. Once you're collecting all of the data that comes off, then there's opportunities with leveraging that into the business analytics and all of that sort of stuff. And then finally, what we're finding more and more with the stadiums, as Sarah and Dan will attest to, is that this connected solution beast is big enough to actually change what your business looks like. So it changes the shape of the business and quite quickly. So there needs to be an understanding of that, of what's actually happening in the market. So we've certainly been doing our best to try to help the stadium understand what this can do to the business and then help it prepare for the future state.
And so you've got a few partners there that have put in solutions in multiple venues. I was lucky enough to go to Sporting Park. It was still Livestrong Park then, before Lance's transgressions came in. It's now Sporting Park. And for those who don't know, Sporting Park's in Kansas City. It's where Sporting KC play, and the guys who run and own Sporting KC have their own tech company called Sporting Innovations, which is where the digital app is coming from on the Euphoria platform. And I was lucky enough to play around with that, and because and you're right, it's very much a different scenario in the States where it's the owner owns the stadium and owns the team. You know, the Warriors have got Wi-Fi in the Oracle Arena, in an old arena. Why? Because the owner wants to check his email. Like, that's why they got Wi-Fi. Whereas, with Sporting KC, they own the whole pipe. So they were running the TV trucks, they were running the tech inside the stadium, and they were running all the digital stuff. So it got to a point when we were at the game, I think it was Tim Cale's Red Bulls were playing Sporting KC, there was a shot on goal. Literally, you pull your phone out of the pocket, and by the time you pull the phone out of the pocket, you can watch the replay because they owned all the channels. Now, that's something that's on the roadmap. You know, you don't own all the channels. You're not plugged into Channel 7. There are all things like that. But about the experience and stuff like that and how it can change your business, Sarah, you want to give us an idea of some of the things that, I downloaded the app on Saturday and clicked it and found my seat, those kind of things. What are some of the things you would like to be able to do and that are on the roadmap that, because this isn't we've dropped it in, it's good, it works. What's, where's the path go?
Yeah, so we probably have been, and stadiums in general in Australia have probably been pretty operationally led in terms of we have this concert, we're putting this concert on, we need to make sure people get in, find their seat, leave, and we've done our job. We've really turned into focusing on a fan engagement, so probably more for those that work at clubs, probably that kind of attitude, making sure that when people come here, it's not just about I'm sitting in a stadium and for us there's a roof and I don't get wet and that's it. So the fan journey for us starts when someone arrives on a train or a tram, and the app being able to tell them how they get here, the app being able to allow them to purchase their parking at a discounted rate. So the technology we have allows us to push notify people to say, hey, $15 parking if you book in the next hour. That person can then pop on the app, book their parking, use that to get in, or vice versa, using public transport timetables to tell them how to get to the game. As they're walking down, they can get a notification saying, hey, if you visit this merchandise store outside gate 2, you get 20% off. The whole way through, just making sure that they're targeted offers. So on top of that is the ability to be able to segment people and know if they're people that like to buy merchandise or arrive at the game early or don't arrive at the game early and we want them to. So to be able to segment and set up offers that are timed and mean something to the consumer. As they come into the ground, being able to find their seat, interactive maps to be able to say, I'm on level 1, where's a toilet? They all flash up. Here's your closest toilet, go there. Here's the shortest line.
There's no instructions in the video. Like, here's a video on how to go to the toilet.
And
Thank you, Rod, Etihad Stadium.
More importantly, as I walk to the toilet, there's a TV so I don't miss any of the action. And then integrated offers through the IPTV system as well. So being able to have an LRAP on a TV saying, hey, look at your app now, this offer's come through. So it's so dynamic, and the ability to press a button and have something coming through to your screen, the ability for clubs likewise to understand their consumer better. The back end of the Sporting Innovations platform is unbelievable in terms of its single customer view, integrating with POS systems, ticketing data, member data, all that gets pulled in, and you can literally find a person and say they're a member of this club, they've gone to these games, they went to the AC/DC concert, they bought a beer here, they bought a pie here, they like betting because they use the tab offer, and being able to know that person inside out is something that we haven't really seen Australian. And
you're still 6 to 12 months on getting all of that data to get that full picture, because you just turn that pipe on.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Adam quickly, because we were talking, you were showing us earlier the scripting language, so the stuff that's happening here, the L stuff and the different things that gets shown depending on parts of the game. And, Sarah, you were talking about before, you come from Clubland. And Clubland and Stadium Land has been a bit like this. Like, oh, we want to do stuff, but the stadium won't let us. And you're trying to fix that. Talk a little bit about what now you can do with all the IPTVs and the scripting stuff that you've got behind the scenes on, click of a button running certain things.
Yeah, sure. So with Stadium Vision, which is the software that drives the IPTV, it basically enables you to group and zone any number of screens any which way you want. So if you want certain parts of the stadium to be branded for the club that's playing, the home team or the away team, you can do that in certain parts of the stadium, whilst other areas of the stadium can be branded for your commercial partners of the stadium. If there's a corporate function on, you can set it up with wayfinding from lifts to guide your corporates up to their suites. You can have, as you can see in this area, a range of different TV channels playing, which can be changed, set up prior to the game to change depending on what other sports are playing or on each channel. It also enables you to have ad hoc states, which are moments of exclusivity. So you can see sort of out on the vomitory screens out there, they're all branded North Melbourne from the Sunday game, and when there's a goal kicked, you can activate that ad hoc state, which lights up the stadium basically all throughout whichever groups and zones you want. So it really gives you good flexibility in that sense, and also enables you to brand the stadium depending on which home tenant club is playing.
So with the Josh, with the app, I know the guys at Sporting KC could effectively have heat maps and see what people are doing in the stadium and where they're going. Is that something that you're starting to get that data for? And we'll be able to?
Absolutely. It's probably it's the old chestnut of you've got your brain 100%, how much of it we're using. The capability of this stadium here is equal to anywhere else on the planet. So some of the technology that's actually come into this stadium is actually hot off the press from Cisco. Some of the digital media players, for instance, that controls what goes on the television screen is actually fresh out of the box, completely new. And that was one of the challenges that we've had to actually understand in a live environment how that's going to interact. So the capability in this stadium is second to none. The question we've got is actually catching up, utilising that knowledge and educating the marketplace. So now that the stadium is up and running and we've gone live, already contemplations happening on what phase 2 looks like. And that's a lot of work that we've got to do with Sarah and Dan. Dan's just come back a couple of months ago. He was overseas, did the overseas gravy train to have a look at what best practice is.
You say that's like it's a bad thing.
Definitely not. It's a nice industry to be in at times. So it's those sort of things now that we're being contemplated. So one of the key things is, do you go the commercial path or do you go to the utility path? So one of the big things that Stadium has here is obviously parking. It's a big revenue driver. It's a big service for this stadium. So how is that going to be bedded down? Then can I give you a parking story? Please do.
So the San Francisco 49ers have put their parking passes now into their app for the stadium, and they are now their data is showing that if someone doesn't, and they make their fans have to log in to download their parking pass. And so if a fan who's paid and bought his parking pass for the match, they know if he doesn't download it by Thursday, he's not going to. So what do? They sell it again. So they're selling their parking spots multiple times. And because they're all digital now, they've stopped the photocopying my pass and letting people in. And so now they're getting, 130, 140% revenue on their car park pass. So sorry if I've just sold out more passes, but ingenious. But it's all because it's all now in the phone, and they've got, they did it primarily to get rid of fraud, because people were just photocopying their passes and the guys weren't checking them. But now that they had to all be connected to a device, they were able to get more revenue. So, I guess that's one, digital ticketing is one that Levi Stadium are trying to roll out, and they rolled it out last year in their first stadium, and they had their first year at Levi, they had 30% take-up, which is a massive amount of take-up, but they put a lot of rewards around it and for their fans. But is that something that that the stadium's looking to do, to be able to put your Bulldogs membership or your North membership, because it's a pain to pull it out of your wallet or always be holding it. If it's in your phone, it's in your phone. You never lose your phone.
Certainly one of the things that's been contemplated is, more in particular, there's the strategy around that, and then the question is, how do we do it? So we've obviously got the Docklands just over there, Spencer Street Station, so huge opportunities. So certainly as this stadium more and more turns into being a promoter of events rather than just an AFL house, it's how do you interact with the precinct and how do you actually create value to the customer and the user around that. So certainly I won't steal too much of Sarah's thunder, but obviously her background and the huge change, and I've certainly seen it in the 9 or 10 months that I've been working with the stadium, from the operational side to engaging the fan. That is absolutely key to the strategy that Dan and Sarah are instructing us to work on. So a lot of our investigation, the workshops that we're doing are based in, all right, we've now got this thing, how are we going to interact it? So all of those things, beacon technology, sound technology, the retail precinct, obviously talking to partners and turning this into an area that people want to come to 7 days a week rather than focusing on a fixture on a Saturday.
Sign up for the Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/SGN.
Thanks again to Sarah Brady there from Etihad Stadium. Sarah was actually one of my very first Sports Geek clients way back in the days in 2010 when she was working at the Manly Seagulls. So it's always great to work with former clients when they pop up in different places. So if you haven't gone to a Sports Business Melbourne event, please, for those of you who are in Melbourne, go to meetup.com, Sports Business Melbourne. If you can't remember that, simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/sportsbizmelb. I've got Dan Butterley from the Mountain West Conference is going to come down next week to visit catch up with a few people. And Dan is going to be, we're going to have a Sports Business Melbourne event at Honey Bar on May 12. Dan, you might remember him from episode 19, way back then. Worked with Dan at the Mountain West Conference when the Mountain West Conference was formed many years ago, around analysing what the new conference at that stage could offer sponsors and getting some information. This is way back before the days of things like Facebook, where it's far easier now to get data on your fans. So really looking forward to having a chat with Dan, and you can only hear that if you come along to Sports Business Mel, because I'm only going to be sharing snippets of those kind of conversations on the podcast. And I do want to reiterate big congratulations to Russell Scabetti. And if you went to one of those meetups, please encourage your group, your town, to do more of those. I'm a big believer in meeting in IRL, in real life. It's great for the industry. It's great to get a bit of sharing across sports and across departments, whether you be in marketing, operations, membership, digital, whatever it might be. My next guest is, again, from the town of Melbourne, from my hometown. He's the captain of the North Melbourne Football Club, which is one of the AFL teams, and currently working with him on a few projects. So I thought we would have a chat on the podcast, specifically around some of the pressures of being an AFL captain, both from a time point of view, a management point of view, and then also the pressures that the fan and the public exposure offer, especially with as I said earlier, the instance with Alistair Clarkson and Chris Judd happening in the past couple of weeks. So it was good to catch up with Andrew Swallow, and here's our chat. Very happy to welcome here at Sports Geek HQ, captain of the North Melbourne Football Club, Andrew Swallow. Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast.
No worries. Thank you for having me, Sean.
No worries. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about being, obviously, captain. You've been captain for now 3 years. What are some of the things you've learnt in being a captain of an AFL club?
I suppose, firstly, it's probably a lot more work, than what it used to, or you got the thoughts around it. Back in the day, I think they just sort of flipped the coin and you ran it in front of the team, and you might have had a bit of a say at match committee, but nowadays it's a lot more involved. We do a lot of things, in the media, doing the press conferences. You do a lot with the corporate side of things. We go and do a lot of sponsor functions and so forth. And, we spend a fair bit of time with, our leadership group and discussing the game and the playing group and where everyone's at. So it's a lot more, but I'm really enjoying it. It has its challenges and its ups and downs, but, what a great way to actually, have an impact upon a club and drive the destiny of where you want to go.
You do hear a lot about in the AFL world and in a lot of sports in leadership groups and far more many more meetings now. It's a lot more like management now, AFL land.
Yep.
What kind of impact, like in working with all the guys, because they're all of varying ages, guys same age as you, to your previous captain still going around Boomer Harvey. What is it like in all those meetings? Getting the right things done, and feeling like you are leading the club with that group.
Yeah, I suppose we have a leadership meeting at the start of every week, and I think the thing these days is you can't have just one leader. You need a core group of guys. We've got myself as captain, and then another 5 guys in the leadership group. So you need that sort of 6 to 8 players, roughly, I think, to form your leadership group. You don't want it too big, but you need those guys to really drive. So we spend a bit of time early in the week just discussing what direction we want to take, things we need to discuss from either the weekend or where we think we need to go going forward, and from there that sort of I suppose helps us set up to know what to speak about in the meetings we have later on in the week, because as you said, the meetings have increased a fair bit, but that's just part of the game. You got to go through your review, you got to go look at your opposition and tactical things of going forward. So you need to actually do the do the meetings, but you just got to make sure that they're efficient and you're not sitting there wasting time.
On the sitting there, have you tried the stand-up meetings? One of the things that that I put in with one of my previous jobs was making sure all meetings were everyone had to stand up. And it stops people waffling on. It gets people to the point, makes them very efficient because people don't like standing there. But maybe the sports scientists will say, "Sorry, we can't have these blokes standing for too long."
Well, our coach actually, he's a crook back at the moment, so Brad's actually got the standing desk.
Okay.
So he doesn't sit down when he's at his desk. He's got the standing desk, and he stands up for most of the meetings. But we all sit back and relax, and the lights go off, and you put a bit of vision on and. We find a couple of guys. I think Jared Waite got caught snoozing yesterday. So, but yeah, it's probably something that we could bring in the standing meeting.
Pretty full on being a footy player these days.
Yeah.
You get one day off a week. It's pretty much 9 to 5 like everybody else. But then you've got all the extracurricular of media and those kind of things. How do you fit in other parts of your life? Like people talk about work-life balance. What's it like as a footy player?
I think it's great in one regard. Yeah, it is. It's a full-time job. Most of the guys don't have time to do too much outside of it. Some will go to uni. I've been to uni in the past, and you can sort of tick that along. But footy is the main thing. But I suppose with our jobs, it's very flexible. It changes from week to week. Our schedule, we depending on when we play, will change. So you just learn to adapt, and you just learn to put everything in your calendar and schedule it. So. I love that. I love that footy's like that. It's not, we don't sit behind a desk and we have to work these set hours, but, we might start at, 8 o'clock one day and the next day it might be at lunchtime or, we might have a day off. So I love that flexibility of it. But yeah, it is full on and you just have to be, really organised and book everything in. And
so what do you look to do outside of footy? What interest do you have? Because I do know some guys that are, full on footy heads and they love their footy. Then they watch it when they get home and they're on all the time. Whereas others have, interests, varied and far away from footy. What about yourself?
I really enjoy my finance. So I spent 6.5 years studying. I did a Bachelor of Business in Accounting, Banking and Finance. So I finished that at middle of last year, so I've had a bit of time off from that. But yeah, I really enjoyed doing that, and I suppose that's where I see a bit of my career path post football. So spent a lot of time investing into that and getting that degree. And over I suppose the last 8 or 9 months, I've taken a bit of time off from that, and I'm building a house at the moment. So. Just getting that organised and sorted, and researching and buying lots of things.
Are you getting on the tools, or are you just are you a good delegator?
I would actually love to be on the tools, but I'm a good delegator. I'm not handy at all. My dad was an accountant, and I think I picked up his skills. So we're not handy at all with anything. So. I just go down there and pay the bills.
Well, if you can balance the builder's budget, you're doing okay. That's part of that's the biggest challenge of renovating.
Yeah, no. Well, probably one of the main things I learned early on is I probably should have had a fixed cost loan rather than cost plus. So it's the budget's blown out a little bit, but it's great fun. I'm really enjoying that, and it's probably a bit of a passion which I didn't realise was there. So hopefully in the future, I have a few more opportunities to find a few places and either renovate them or develop them, because I've actually felt like I've really found a passion.
It is a bug that bites. I mean, I've got my little brother as a builder, and he just keeps building a new place, moving in and then moving out. I mean, his wife is a little bit sick of moving houses, but he's very good at doing it. So why not keep doing it? The other thing I want to do is quickly chat to you about a bit of an issue recently with Alistair Clarkson and then Chris Judd both being accosted is probably the best way of being put it by a fan and untoward attention and how to deal with it. You're a public figure in a footy town, a footy mad town like Melbourne. Have you had those type of scenarios yourself, or how do you deal with fans that just come up to you at random points?
I suppose I've been pretty lucky. You get a lot of people coming up, and most people are lovely. They come up and say hello and want to have a chat or take a photo. any time I've copped abuse, it's probably been from afar. Someone leaning out the side of their car and yelling something. But I think I suppose with the Clarko situation, you probably just need to be smart especially around the game time. I think you get a lot of people coming in and out of the stadiums, and just got to be really careful that there's enough security around, because you don't want to be in a situation which he felt like he was in, where someone is getting right up in his face, and I don't agree probably the way in which he reacted, but just got to be really careful in with that. And
I mean, that's the thing, like, the Clarko one where he's leaving the game and walking through a throng of fans, and half of them have been on the sauce all game. So it leads to a situation that might lead that way. But, the Chris Judd one where the poor bloke's just having some fish and chips in Lygon Street, and to have someone to come up to him, and then on top of that have person number 2 decide to record it.
Yeah. I think that's really, and I think from more reports, Juddy did really well to handle himself, because we don't want to get in an altercation. We know we're public figures, and we know as soon as something we're a part of some sort of incident, it's going to make news, and it's just something that you don't want to have to deal with. But when you're just sitting there by yourself, not interrupting anyone, you got to feel sorry for the guy. But I think he did really well in handling himself. I think you just need to try and de-escalate the situation as best you can. And in the end, that might mean you have to walk away. But as I said, majority of 99% of people have, from my experiences, have been wonderful, and a lot of them are just fans who want to get to come up and say hello. So, you don't mind that, but when blokes are really having a go at you, and you're doing nothing to bring it on, it can be a pretty hard situation to get yourself out of.
Yeah, it is a tough one, and it's just hard for people on the street like myself to not know that position, because it is a bit. Yeah. The example I use is they come up to you and they feel like they know you because they've seen you on TV, they've heard you, and you have no relationship with them. So it's a very different different thing. And one of the reasons they feel like they know you is things like social media and things like that. So because you're sharing little bits of your life and telling people what you're doing. How have you found using social, Twitter and Insta like that, and in getting a bit of feedback from the fans?
I suppose it's been a bit of a journey, because I think you learn along the way. When it sort of first all popped up on the scene, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. I was one of the early players, probably the first player at our club to get on Twitter. Yep. I think they are wonderful tools, to use to actually give the fans a bit of an insight. And I think our club especially is wonderful in the way in which we allow our fans to get some unique insights into our players that most people don't get to see. And I think we want to continue that, but we have to also be very very careful in the way we actually do use it now, because there are a lot of people who sit behind a keyboard and can write some pretty nasty things. And a lot of people just want to get their opinions out there, and whether they're valid or not. So we just have to really educate our players, and have to be really just careful in what we actually do put out there.
Well, that's what, when I'm doing any sessions with players or groups, and what the fans love is feeling like they're part of the locker room. So if that banter is happening, whether it's a bit of ribbing amongst blokes that's happening in the public sphere, and previously that was always happening. It was happening on SMS, it was happening on email, or that kind of thing. But bubbling up the right amount, and that's the right amount. I know working with the guys at the Socceroos, they had all the young blokes coming through for the World Cup and the Asian Cup, and talking to Timmy Cale, he goes, I can't talk to all of those blokes yet. Because they were a little bit too loose and on social media. And he's like, well, I've got a reputation, I've got my sponsors. I don't want one of these younger blokes mucking up and that reflecting badly on me. Yeah. So it's sort of, as much as, leading on the field, you've also got to lead those blokes, as they're coming into the club, to say, you've got mates out there that are 19, 20, 21 that are doing all kinds of things on social.
Yeah.
Once you become a footballer, you've got to lift your game and realise. I use my Auntie Kath as a guideline. If I can't send it to Auntie Kath, it shouldn't go out. Everyone's got an Auntie Kath or a nana that they can qualify that with. Because it is important for you guys to say, I can only use this if everyone's using it the correct way. And I reckon what Timmy Cale said about the young guys was right on. And it's important for those young guys to realise it.
Yeah, no, it is important to do that, and you want to make sure that the guys are getting, or the public are getting a nice insight and having a bit of laugh, because they realise that we are just your average people who are very fortunate to have a job of running around and kicking a footy. But what I think as well with social media is, I suppose, the interesting or how much of your life you actually want to get out there. And I'm quite a private person. I don't like to I want to be able to give the fans a little bit of an insight, but on the other hand, I want to make sure that I can actually go and have a coffee then at my local coffee shop and not get pestered and annoyed and have it out in the public life. So I've really found that a bit of a challenge in trying to weigh up those two things. How much do I put out there so that people will feel like I'm not just putting up a great win, go Kangaroos, sort of thing, and where compared with a photo where they get a bit of an insight, and I think that's something which we're all probably constantly learning. How much do we actually give ourselves out there, or how much do we just actually keep quiet and
And that is a balance, and that's something that hopefully over the next 6 to 12 months you'll start figuring out, and to me it's about having a longer term goal. So if you want to be somewhere, then the snippets of life that you share help you get there. And I guess it's what I do on my account. On Sean Callanan is share what the Sports Geek life is and where I am, and I'll share when I'm at Arsenal Stadium watching Arsenal, but if I'm not, but if there's other parts that I don't want to be shared, that I get shared. So it is your choice in what you do, and the choice you make and what you share will help frame what people think of you. So that's the thing with social media. It's all a perception game, and there's a stack of people out there just sharing what they want people to see. So athletes and that aren't any different.
No.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Look forward to a big season from the Kangaroos, and I'll talk to you soon.
No worries. Thanks, Sean.
Like the Sports Geek podcast? Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/sportsgeek.
Thanks again to Andrew Swallow there. Looking forward to doing a little bit more podcasting with Andrew Swallow in the very near future, so stay tuned for that one, whether you're a North Melbourne Football Club fan or just a fan of footy or just a fan of Andrew Swallow. I'm looking forward to doing a podcast with him in the very near future. A couple of things I wanted to chat about. One is my presentation for SEAT in San Francisco. If you haven't secured your spot for SEAT 2015 in San Francisco, July 19 to 21, please do so. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com to secure your tickets and see some of the things that I'm planning for it. And one of those things is my keynote. My keynote usually pivots around showing off case studies from around the world that have inspired me, that I love seeing teams do. I've got a swag already from some of my very talented guests on the podcast, but I need more. I want your submissions. So go there, go to that page, sportsgeekhq.com/seat 2015, and simply just fill out the form. Let me know what your best work is. I do my best to keep in touch and see what the latest and greatest is. But if you can point me in the direction of here's what we tried to do, here's what worked, I'd love to hear about it. One example of that is the Portland Trailblazers year in review site that they did via Tumblr. I tried to make a quirky video of it, but unfortunately the music they used stopped Facebook from sharing it. So go to the show notes for this episode, sportsgeekhq.com/86 for a link to that. Or if you just look up Trailblazers year in review Tumblr, and Google will do the rest. But great work there by TJ. I'm pretty sure it'll make the cut for my presentation. So, yeah, I need those presentations. And also, yeah, if you haven't secured your ticket, please do so. Christine's busily preparing 2016 and 2017 conferences. Currently, she's traveling around in London and Atlanta and looking at different sites for future seed conferences. But San Francisco will be a terrific conference. And don't forget, if you are from Australia or New Zealand and you want to head to seat for the first time because you hear me talk about it all the time, there is a very special offer there for first-time attendees from Australia and New Zealand. If you make the effort to go all the way to San Francisco, the 3 days at seat will be well worth your while. It's a terrific offer, and I thanks Christine for doing that. One more call out. Please join the Sports Business Melbourne meetup group. Just go to sportsgeekhq.com/sportsbizmelb and you can find that group. And the last thing I want to do is have a quick chat. It's almost a Sports Geek hot take. Now I'm doing sports radio. Just on the furor, the indignation, if I've said that wrong, I know I haven't. I'm not going to edit it. I'm going to leave it out there. Around the Houston Rockets tweet at the end of the Rockets and Dallas Mavericks playoff series with Chad Shanks being probably the first person to ever be fired over emoji when he put the emoji of the horse head and the gun and pretty much whispered, please be quiet, it's all over soon, to sort of point out the demise of the Mavericks. And very much edgy, very snarky, very much on brand of what the Rockets' account had been. Had a bit of snark, had a bit of smart aleck to it. But in this case, the angry mob decided that it was a little bit too far. We've had a really good discussion in the Sports Geek Facebook group. So we've got a Facebook group there for the Sports Geek podcast community. If you want to join up, simply go to facebook.com/sportsgeek. It's a closed group, but I will approve you if you've been kind enough to leave an iTunes review. It's a small price to pay. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. And some of the chatter in there has been, one, was it an isolated incident? Was it a problem where was Chad stepping over that line? I think for me, you need to be very upfront and define that line, especially with management. And Dwayne Hankins went through that in his role at the LA Kings, and then now he's doing similar stuff at the Trailblazers. He commented, you've got to make sure if you're going to ask your social media guy to provide a bit of snark, you can't really fire them for providing them that snark. And I tend to agree. I think the way that they handled it by deleting the tweet and apologising pretty quickly and owning it and pretty much apologising straight away once the negative feedback came in. I think that's pretty much where it was left. I don't have a problem with the Mavericks chiming back and saying it wasn't classy. That's it. They have every right to do so. I mean, it was when you are playing in that snark area, you are leaning in to your fans and without the fear or favour of worrying about anybody else. But if upper management or anyone higher up doesn't want that, then that's when you need to have a serious discussion to say, are we going to do it? And then I think the other thing, and I think we saw a little bit of the copycat stuff happen after the LA Kings' successful 2012 run and the Stanley Cups with Dwayne Hankins and Pat Donahue behind the tweets, is it does take talent. You do have to have the ability to be able to know what is funny, what hits the pulse of your fans. Now, in this case, Chad may have stepped over the line and maybe he could have rethought it. But it does take talent to be able to do that. And if you don't have that quick wit and the ability of knowing what the crowd might think and be a little bit funny, be able to tell a joke every now and again, then it will just not work. It will come across as forced. It will come across as try hard. So I think it is a talent to be able to do that snark account, that giving your brand voice. And it really is a Twitter thing. Some teams are doing it. by using GIFs and those kind of things. Some of them are doing it, with a real personal touch, that kind of thing. So it is a matter of finding the voice of your team and what management, fans, and everyone involved are comfortable with. I definitely do agree, and I'll link to the article from an interview on the Sporting News, I think it was, with Chad after his firing. Twitter now is fair game for the media. It will be in the media. It will filter back to upper management. Whereas 2011, 2012, maybe even 2013, there was a whole bunch of stuff happening on Twitter that people you only knew about if you were on those platforms, and a lot of people weren't too fussed about it. But now, if it's an easy way to make a quick story, to provide clickbait and the like, then the media will go after it. So it's really, really important to remember that maybe one of the filters is, and I talked a little bit about with Andrew Swallow, the Arnie Kath filter, but to have the filter, will Mashable, will Business Insider, will BuzzFeed pick up this tweet and run with it? That's one of the risks that you take with a snarky account and an edgy account. But you definitely need management buy-in. So building out a conversation plan and even playing out some scenarios, and that's where coming up with some of these in the spur of the moment without some vetting process. I'm not saying every tweet needs to be vetted, but really running out these scenarios. Like, some of these tweets can be planned. If you're going to clinch a series or you're going to win a big game, you can brainstorm these kind of scenarios. Say, well, if we do win and we do get up and this does happen, what are the things that we can do? And then I think that's a better process than someone going, this is a great idea in the heat of the moment. And I think, the emotion of the game can be something that admins or people running the social can get caught up in, especially if there's a lot of banter coming back either from the opposition fans or that kind of thing, and you can feel like they're in the emotion of the game. And so I think anything you can do to separate that a little, or at least have someone as a buffer to say, what do you think? How's this? Is this too edgy? Because again, that kind of post didn't need to be tweeted right there and then. It could have been prepped, could have been sent. I mean, obviously these kind of things takes your judgment. In this case, it was just an error in judgment because it did not align with what the team wanted in the end. But there's also the case of, got to be careful. The angry mob sometimes should not be listened to. So, in my case, I would have just would have been a slap on the wrist. Said, don't do it again. And by 3 days later, no one remembers a tweet 3 days later. Whereas now, by firing Chad, it's a bigger deal. It's a bigger story. It's potentially got more brand damage than if you just owned it, moved on to the next thing. 5 tweets later, no one's seen it. So that's my take on it. And as I said, I've really enjoyed the discussion in the Sports Geek podcast community in Facebook. So please join that. And please send in your case studies for my Seat 2015 keynote. I'd love to profile more and more of the Sports Geek podcast listener community. Until next week, my name is Sean Callan, and please send me a tweet to tell me that you've listened to this episode. Really do appreciate all the feedback and all the reviews that I get. Cheers.
Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources. Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. Did you know Sports Geek Podcast has listeners in over 50 countries? Thank you for listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.